This week, I made some upgrades to my 3D printer. Up right now.
I'm going to jump right into the project today, and I start by showing you my 3D printer. This is the Monoprice Maker Select version 2. I've had it for about 2 years, maybe 3, I think 2 years. But I got this printer specifically because it's so easy to upgrade and there's such a great community behind it. So we're going to jump right in. This is the first upgrade, which is the C braces, and we're looking at Thingiverse here, where I downloaded all the parts and grabbed the instructions for adding these C braces. It's fairly easy to follow, so let's download them. We're going to 3D print it and install all the pieces. There's a parts list in this file, so I'll put a link to this. Here you see most of the parts. I just used a PLA to print this. The one thing I didn't do is I feel like I could have gotten more of an infill to it. I think I did the standard 20%. I think if I had gone a little higher, yeah, it would have taken longer. I mean, I think this set of parts still took almost 8 hours to print. If I had put a little more infill, yeah, it would have taken a little longer, but I think the pieces would have been a little more brittle. I ended up putting some super glue in parts of it just to reinforce it. Got me a little scared that they might break. But overall, they were solid parts and easy to print, easy to follow the instructions. Here's the printing. It's I use this golden color PLA, mostly because I have a lot of it. I got it on discount, and it's an easy PLA to print. So here I'm cleaning up the parts. Yeah, just a couple of supports. The brim came right off. I didn't use my enclosure, which is technically is the first upgrade I made to my 3D printer. I'll put a link to that video in the cards. But yeah, you see, clean up here all the parts. Well, here most of the parts. I ended up printing some of the rounded nut parts that you'll see later. Here is some of the parts I gotta buy, which is a threaded rod, cut to about 16 inches. I'm marking it, and then I'm gonna use a little hacksaw. You can use all sorts of tools, but I just went to like Walmart and bought this like carbon steel flexible hacksaw. It took a second to get it going, but once it got going, it really cut right through the 2 rods I had to buy. I had to buy 2 just because the length was too long to get both out of one. But now we have the parts. We're gonna put that aside, and here is the next upgrade we're gonna do, which comes from the good people of Buildtak. So this is not a sponsor. I actually paid for all this. It's the flex plate. I wanted to make it easier to get the parts off, so I ordered the flex plate system with 2 flex plates, so I can try two other different surfaces they have. And it's easy install, so we're going to go ahead and get to installing it. That's the flex plate itself, and this is one of the flex plates, or the magnet part. First thing to do is we got to remove the old surface that came with the printer. Got a lot of use out of it, and it peeled right off. Actually, I thought it was going to be difficult, but once I got one corner going, it really came right off and left pretty much no residue behind. So I was surprised. I thought it was going to be much more difficult to take it off. With that gone, here is the magnetic part of the flex plate. And this is really meant to be a permanent add to your machine. So it has a glue side. The magnetic part helps it stay down, but the glue really keeps it from popping off. And it just slaps right on. Here I'm getting one of the flex plates ready. This is the black surface. I forget what they're all called, but I'll put a link to the flex plate from Buildtak on the notes as well. And yeah, just put it on, press it down, and use the little squeegee to make sure there were no bubbles. So after installing the Buildtak magnetic plate, you gotta change the Z-axis. You see here, this is the sensor for the Z-axis to tell it what its max is. If you look at these 2 bolts on the side and the left side, it used to be set right there, so I've moved it up just slightly
so that now when you look at there, you can see right where it needs to be. Otherwise, it's going to be pushing into the bed. So you just gotta, just change the little bolts, move it up, and tighten it back up. With these two dowels right here that are cut the exact same size, another upgrade. What happens is sometimes in the sprinters, the Z-axles will fall out of line. It just won't be parallel anymore, so you gotta sort of check it. Let me show you how you use them. So here you see they're right up against the Z-axis bar. There's one, there's the other. And now I know that this bar is parallel. Sometimes it'll get off of parallel, so you need to check that from time to time. Now it's checked, we're good. And keep working.
So these two upgrades down, let's get back to the original one. Here I'm putting one of the first parts that were 3D printed. The way I went about it is I put one bolt through the part so that way it would hold it in place and I wouldn't have to worry about clamping it or something. Once that one bolt was in, I took the other three out and then just a matter of putting all the bolts back in. Those are the upper supports, obviously. And it was pretty easy. I was afraid the frame wouldn't hold as well. You have to get new of the little M bolts. You have to get longer ones. So that's part of the list. Same thing for the back. Those are the back supports. And mostly the back supports get put on because you're putting ones in the front. Those are the last ones we'll put on. That way you can keep the bed parallel. And I thought I could do the same thing of putting one bolt in and then sliding it into place, but I couldn't do it, so I eventually had to give up on that and take all the bolts out and put them in. At the bottom is not as big of an issue. They only have one way of going in, so and here we're getting the front ones ready. For the front ones, I thread a rod through first, put the nut, another thing you have to buy. Put it through, and then there's little caps for the bottom. I guess you don't have to put the caps, but they came with the thing, and I 3D printed them. So once the cap's on, they're getting ready. Now we put the nut on the top of the rod, and then here you're gonna see one of the parts that I 3D printed off camera, but they're just rounded nut covers that help you tighten it at the top. Which we're going to do next. We're going to start installing the bottom. Here, just take the bolts out and put them in. And again, you have to buy all new M bolts or M screws. They're just longer, and you can get them. I got them at Home Depot. They're not one hard to find. Again, there's a list of all the parts you need on the files for Thingiverse. So all of that's in the notes. Once this is in,
So now it's time to tighten the braces. Depending on how long you cut the rod, you may have to remove this guys to put this back in. But I think I had to do that. But if you cut it short enough, you won't have to. Take the triangle and gotta make it flush. Huh? It's pretty flush. And then you want to tighten this guy. Nice and tight there. So here it is, the finished upgraded 3D printer with the vertical supports. This of course is the magnetic flex plate, comes right off. Check it out from Buildtak. I'll put a link to that. I'll put a link to where you can 3D print this parts and all the instructions. I'm very happy with it so far. You can see I've already been printing some stuff. And print quality is pretty good, but it wasn't bad to begin with, so it's hard to compare. I just wanted to get ahead of it and start upgrading the thing. I got this printer specifically because you can upgrade it so much. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back next week with some more. I'm actually working on some 3D prints over here. So, see you guys next week.
If you guys like this project, then maybe you'll enjoy the podcast that I do with my two colleagues, Claudia and Ray. We discuss purpose-driven design, making, and manufacturing. We talk about architecture. We talk about all sorts of making. We have a project of the week. So yeah, please check it out. Again, it's called The Made Podcast. Thanks so much.